Hey guys, in this week's episode, we are talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. But before that, we are doing a little spoiler talk about Knock at the Cabin. So join us!
Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is Mike. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing well. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. If you could pick any insect to be your superpower, which one would you choose?
Wait, does Paul Rudd have the power of an ant?
I don't know, but he's called Ant-Man.
I think it's because he can just get small like an ant, and also because Michael Douglas loves ants, or Hank Pym. The comic
Hank
book
Pym.
character?
Yeah, because
okay.
Pym particles. But yeah, I don't know. But his name is Ant. So I guess, let me rephrase the question. If you could choose the power of an insect or just the name of an insect to be like Bee-Man or Praying Mantis Man, which seems redundant, but which one would you choose?
Well, all the good bugs are taken.
Yeah.
You know, you first go to like Spider-Man, and then you're like, well, that's a thing already. A big thing. You know?
Sure.
And then you say Scorpion, but then you're like, that's just a villain of Spider-Man. So, I don't know. I don't want to go down that road. All the good bugs are taken. Here's what I'll say. If I could have the power to shrink like Ant-Man, I would do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. You could be Grasshopper Man, and just, you could play songs
really
with your legs. Be really good at jumping. So that's my choice.
That's true.
Grasshopper Man.
Yeah. It's a good choice, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. If this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about film and TV news, but really just the TV and movies that we specifically have been watching and also happen to want to talk about. Then we move into our feature review. This week, as you probably caught on, because I said it earlier and we also talked about ants and insects, we're reviewing Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
Yeah, and when we're not talking about insects or insect movies, one of the things we like to do here on the Casual Cinecast is we do casually Criterion episodes. Usually it's every other week or thereabouts, 2 or 3 a month or less. Anyways, but what we do is we each pick a movie. Usually Justin's here too, so there's 3 of us. We each pick a movie. We put it out onto Twitter, and we let you guys decide. So check out our last episode, On the Waterfront, and we have, I think, a big one coming up next time we do a Casually Criterion. Mike, what is that movie that we're going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that movie that we are going to do is a film that I chose, and I want to specify and underline that point because I don't always win.
Sure.
But yeah, that was The Third Man, which is what my choice was. I believe, Chris, you chose Wild Strawberries, which was a close second.
Yeah.
And then Justin chose Mansour Hulot's Holiday.
Hulo. Yeah, that's really hard to pronounce.
But anyways, yeah, thanks for everyone who voted, and I'm excited to talk about The Third Man because I haven't seen that movie in a long time, and I remember it being very good.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about that one.
Okay, also, you kind of mentioned it, but I think we should address it. Justin is not here today. He was busy this week and could not make the recording times work, but he did record a little bit of his thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and we will share them with you at the appropriate time. So you'll still get to hear Justin fans.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, that's a cliffhanger. Okay, so now I say we go ahead and get into News on the March.
Let's do it.
News on the March!
All right, so Chris, thanks for joining me here in News on the March. Today, here's the thing. I didn't have anything new to talk about. Everything that I have been watching happens to be ongoing and stuff we've already kind of like talked about at the beginning and would be weird to talk about in the middle of a season because, I don't know, usually we talk about things at the beginning when we start watching them and then when the season wraps up, if we feel like it. So since I'm just watching like Bad Batch and Last of Us and all that, you decided you wanted to talk about this because I talked about it last News on the March or the time before that, and you hadn't seen it yet. Is that right?
And I've kind of been dying to talk to somebody about it, and in a spoiler way.
Okay. So yeah, there's your warning, listener.
Yeah, spoilers abound.
Okay. So everything is time-stamped. If you don't want to hear any spoiler discussion or any discussion, whatever, about Knock at the Cabin, look at the show notes and skip ahead. Okay. All right, Chris, I think that was plenty of time. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, man. So I guess I'll just start off like on my general thoughts of the movie, and then we can kind of dive into the spoilers a little bit. I really like the first 2/3 of the movie. I think a lot of what you said, if I remember correctly, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but like...
Oh, I will.
Absolutely. But I really like the first 2/3 of this film. I thought Dave Bautista was really great.
Yep.
Just in general throughout the film. In fact, all the acting was really, really good. I think M. Night Shyamalan is really good at creating this suspense, especially they're all in this one little house. And so in order to make you feel cramped or feel the stress of that situation, he's really good at that. And he does these really like close-ups, like especially that opening scene. Dave Bautista comes up to this little girl, and the close-ups just get like closer into his face, and you just feel like, man, I want to back off a little bit, you know? He does all that really well. However, and the other thing is I read the book. So
you had expectations, or at least curiosities.
Yeah. And I think, so I want to dive into that spoiler part of it a little bit more. Do you have any thoughts here that you want to like add to before we go into that last act issue that I have?
Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah, I agree. The first 2/3 of this movie is good, right? And I agree with you that M. Night Shyamalan is really good at creating suspense with pacing and with camera and with his blocking.
Yeah.
In fact, I think if he found a script where no one was speaking, he could probably like create something really great with it. You know what I mean? Like a really compelling movie, like, you know what I mean? Like with a silent protagonist or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I feel like all of his movies, in my opinion, the worst thing about it is like characters behaving in a very unrealistic way, but like not that you have to behave in a realistic way, because some of it's really stylized. Like The Happening, I think, was actually like supposed to be like that. A lot of people don't seem to understand that.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes it's just a little too on the nose, and the line between corny on purpose and just corny gets kind of blurred. And I think it kind of muddies the waters in some of his movies a little bit.
And that can be different from person to person too. You know, like it may
That's
work for
true.
you and not for me, but yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, go on. Okay, so...
Oh, one more thing before we get to the third act. The thing that really was bad in the first two was like these news reports. Like there's one specific one where they're filming what I suppose is just that like it's somebody on the beach and there's this big tidal wave coming. And the whole, you know, like, and it should be suspenseful and you're like, oh my goodness. But like the whole time, all I can think of is like, how did they get this footage? Because it shows the person dying, you know, like, or not, you know, getting trapped in the water. So like, was it a live feed, or all they could have said, we got this live feed from TikTok or whatever, you know?
Right. And then it should just cut off.
Yeah. So funny. Okay. So do you know how the book ends?
No, I listened to a podcast that reviewed this movie after I saw it, and I was because I kind of wanted to talk about it too, but no one had seen it yet, so I was looking for someone talking about it, and they said that the book is a lot darker.
Sure, I mean, I guess it depends on your interpretation, but yes. So in the book, what happens is
spoilers for that, I guess.
Yeah, so we're spoiling the book too. The Dave Bautista character and one of the couple that's been kidnapped are fighting over the gun, and and they accidentally shoot the little girl and she dies. But and the whole point of the movie is they have to kill one of those three people have to die, and one of those three people have to do the killing, right? In order for the sacrifice to be accepted. So the sacrifice
they do it and it is accepted, right?
Yeah. Well, they accidentally shoot the little girl and it's not accepted because it's on accident.
Oh,
And so the two guys are like, fuck this, like they're like, we're just going to accept the end of the world. If what God would want us to be miserable, or
sure.
not accept that. And so we're just going to watch the world burn and walk it together, at least we're together, type of thing. And in the movie, it's very different.
Yeah, it's way different.
Yeah, they sacrifice one of the couple offers himself up to be sacrificed, and they do it. And then it shows the apocalypse happening. Oh man, I think so. I think what the reading of both the book and the movie can be, well, same-sex marriage, I think, is a big thing here. Like religion, there's a fear that same-sex marriage is going to destroy the world, right? And I don't know how much. I think that's definitely in the book, and that's why they accidentally kill the girl, and they're like, well, your rules are no longer good for us, and we're going to, if it destroys the world, it destroys the world, but at least we'll be happy, type of thing. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And in the movie, and I don't know if M. Night Shyamalan, I don't think he's doing this intentionally, but the way I read it is, they kill one of them, and and then it's accepted, and the apocalypse is over, and it's just kind of over, like. There's got to be.
So what is the lesson?
Yeah. Is the lesson that same-sex marriage is going to destroy the world, and they have to sacrifice it? And then, even then, if my God asked me to kill my significant other in order for the world to be saved, I would rage a little bit, especially afterwards, And there's none of that kind of in the movie. And what a jerk of a God, like why? I
don't think M. Night Shyamalan is interested in the question of, is God a jerk for even asking this?
Yeah.
I don't think he's even interested in that. Isn't he like a...
He's very religious, I think.
That's what, yeah, I mean, therein lies the disconnect, I think, right? I don't know. I mean, I haven't read the book, but the book sounds pretty nihilistic about that.
Sure. And it is. It was pretty heart-wrenching. Yeah, I just...
So I don't know. Maybe that's what you're jailing against. I don't know. Maybe that sounds like a fundamental. I don't know. I mean, even if he's not saying that, which I don't think he is. I think.
Yeah.
I think the question he's more interested in asking people is like going on faith. It seems more of like a faith-based.
Sure.
Like, do you believe that sacrifice made a difference, or was it a coincidence? Is kind of the question.
I wish they had played that up more then, because yeah. I also agree that might have been a thing. I wish that had been talked about more throughout the movie. Like, this is just a coincidence that all this is happening. This has nothing to do with us, And it kind of justifies these four horsemen that they call them, It justifies them coming and doing this harm to these people, even to save the world, and they're kind of almost, there's an analogy to be made that they're kind of like QAnon, like nobody else believes us, but we believe ourselves, so we're going to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really struggle with that last part. And I think it's either, there's two options. And I think we've ruled out one of them. One of them's like, M. Night Shyamalan's being malicious about what he's saying, and I don't think that that's true. I think, but the second one's almost just as bad. I think he's accidentally saying something poorly. Does that make sense? Like he didn't think it through.
Sure, yeah, that's possible. But what I would say is like, this reminds me of the Will Smith movie I Am Legend. Whenever I saw that in theaters,
mm-hmm.
And the group I saw it with was way more accepting of it than I was. I just didn't like it at all.
Sure.
And the reason being is kind of like the way a story ends can sometimes be the thesis of the story and capture the themes of the story. So, and then I Am Legend sort of just veers completely off course from the book and is interested in doing other things, at least a theatrical cut.
Sure.
Like that ending. And it's just so, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just sort of like when you miss the point.
Yeah,
or you like, or you don't you don't highlight the point in a way that feels like that audiences know that you got the point.
Sure. I think M. Night Shyamalan missed the point of the book, or wanted to say something different, but he didn't change enough about the book to not still
like
be
he
saying...
liked the premise of the book,
Yeah,
and wanted to make a movie about it.
yeah. And I'm not saying, like, I think if he had like, let's just say, because I don't think there's enough representation of gay couples in cinema, so I'm glad that it's here. But I feel like it may be saying the wrong things, kind of. Like, if
Twitter would disagree with you.
What do you mean?
Just like the people who scream woke and everything with representation.
Sure. You're following the wrong people on Twitter.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say I'm following them. It's just, you know what I mean.
Up,
You hear stuff. It's pretty toxic out there.
Sure. But let's say that you made them a straight couple. Like, I think it might have been more palatable for me. Because I feel like the thesis, at least of the book, is, you know, we're worried that gay couples are going to destroy the world, you know, like, and because we're putting these rules on them, right? That we have, and it's still there in the movie because they are a same-sex couple, but it's not. They
talk about it, but in the movie, but like kind of in a very on the nose way that feels kind of like uncomfortable, like, but not like in the content is uncomfortable, but like more like it makes me cringe.
Yeah,
because like I don't remember their names, but the one who's not Jonathan Groff.
Sure, the one that's like he's not he's like agnostic or atheist.
Yeah, that guy. He has the unfortunate task of just sort of spouting out like angry lines, but like you all hate us, they all hate us, or whatever, and it's just like, I don't know, like the dialogue just doesn't like.
Sure,
the script is just not quite up to snuff, I think, in a believable way, to where like a character would just start yelling those exact to the point thing. You know what I mean? It just feels like
it needs to be a little bit more subtle.
Yeah,
and I think that there is a good movie in here that's more subtle, and I think like that also reckons with, if your God asks you to do this, should you? And then what does that make God? You know, like, and there's plenty of examples of that stuff, you know, like in the Bible, in fact, you know, like Job and stuff like that, where God, and people would argue that it's not God putting people, you know, anyways, but we don't need to go into that part of it. But if you're being asked to do this great thing to stave off this world, you know, the apocalypse, you know, like, what does that make God? Why?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like an Ingmar Bergman thing, you know, like The Silence or something like that, where you're like dealing with your faith and why do you have to do this? And what kind of world would it be that you're in? You know, I think that's all really interesting. And I think a lot of times that's kind of my thing. It
sounds like what you want is Cabin in the Woods instead of Knock at the Cabin.
I mean, that may be true.
Because that's basically Cabin in the Woods wrestles with those questions better than Knock at the Cabin does.
It sounds like, yeah. And I think that that's true. And that may be it. Like, I'm just kind of working my way through it as we go. But I also think, though, that the movie doesn't change enough for it not to be Cabin in the Woods.
Knock at the Cabin.
Knock at the Cabin, or, yeah.
And the book's called something else,
Cabin
right?
at the End of the World, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not changed enough, or it's not different enough to not have the same reading. But it just doesn't follow through with a lot of that stuff in the reading. And I don't think it follows through with a lot of stuff at the end anyways. I don't know. I've been rambling kind of. What do you think? It just kind of, that ending part kind of ruins the whole experience of what I enjoyed about the movie for the rest of it, you know?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it kind of reminded me of when I saw the Martin Scorsese movie Silence, which is a film I think is like really, really good. Like awesome.
Yeah.
Like almost great. But the end of the movie, it left me sort of like disconnected from like the point I was taking from the rest of the movie. Which is to say that I think that's because Martin Scorsese is a very religious guy.
Sure. Very similar to M. Night Shyamalan in that way. They both like went to divinity school and stuff.
Right, exactly. And so I think I have just a disconnect from movies with that kind of message where I could admire them, but if it ends off on that kind of like, that kind of upper note, I don't know. It doesn't ring true to me. It doesn't speak to my experience and my outlook on life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So,
and it doesn't have to necessarily reflect my experience, but
no,
yeah.
But in both movies, like the thing it kind of ends off on, assuming that M. Night Shyamalan, it could be a huge misreading of the movie on my part that he wants you to like take things on faith, right? Like,
sure.
Can you take things on faith? I can't.
Yeah, you
Generally.
specifically, Mike can't.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, like with Silence, it's about these characters enduring all this horrible stuff, but it kind of ends on a hopeful note. But like, I was just taking something completely different from the movie. And then like when it ends on that hopeful note, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I was looking at this as very much a negative view on this whole thing. And you're saying that that's still good and, and that faith is valuable. And it is, and faith can help people, but it doesn't speak to me,
Yeah, I get it. I
so
think
that's kind of where I fall away from this movie in a sense, where it's like, I like the setup, and if it had just ended a little more with my worldview, I could have really liked it.
Well, like, we don't differ that much in our worldview, but I think the way we apply it is a little bit different. But like, Signs is one of my favorite films, and that's all about faith. Like the ending is like, all these things have happened for a reason.
Sure, but that movie had a better script.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, and that's where I think there's something missing from this movie.
There's lots of movies where characters like have to take things on faith and all that stuff that I really like. Sure. Like I still really like Silence.
Yeah,
much better. I don't want to compare it to this movie at all. That movie's miles better than this one. And there's like Signs. I like Signs. I think that's a good movie. I agree with some people that there's some weird things with that movie, but mostly I really like it.
Yeah,
So I'm not against the idea of characters having to take things on faith, but like I said, like underline it a little bit more. And also, if the original story doesn't ask for that or call for that, then also maybe don't change it either.
Yeah, there needed to be like a questioning of faith here.
More of a dialogue going on.
Yeah, where it just doesn't seem that that's there. But it's there in the movie, but he's not interested in talking about it, is kind of how I guess I feel about it.
Yeah, it sounded like he wanted to say something, and I don't know. What else can we say? Third act didn't work for me. It sounds like, based on the reactions, it didn't work for a lot of people either. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I look forward to seeing what M. Night Shyamalan does next. I think this just may be my biggest disappointment, because so much of it was so good. And then it just, that last third.
Yeah. But you know what? The performances are great the whole time.
Yeah.
Everyone's firing on all cylinders. Like, it's made well, it's shot well. Really, my only beef is just the third act. It just got problems, as many movies do. Yeah.
But I will say, even if I don't agree with it, I like talking about this movie.
Sure, yeah. It's a good conversation.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. I think that covers what I wanted to talk about for Knock at the Cabin.
Okay, awesome. So right now we will go ahead and dive into our review for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, starting now.
I used to ask myself a lot of questions. Scott, you're at ex-con. How are you an Avenger? That doesn't make sense. But everywhere I go, people tell me the same thing.
Thank you, Spider-Man!
People still need help, Dad.
That's why we made this.
It's like a satellite for deep space, but quantum.
Wait a minute. You're sending a signal down to the quantum realm. Turn it off. Now! There's something I never told you.
This place. It isn't what you think. I can get you home. And give you more time. If you help me. So, what's it gonna be? Ant-Man.
Usually Justin does this part, so I can't remember the exact wording when we usually come out of this break. But anyways, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania review starting now. We will start with non-spoilers, and then we will go ahead and give you a warning, play a spoiler bumper, then you'll know what's going on, and you can skip ahead accordingly. I think that covers it. Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania was directed by Peyton Reed. It stars Paul Rudd, Catherine Newton, and Jonathan Majors. The IMDb synopsis says, Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, along with Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, explore the quantum realm where they interact with strange creatures and embark on an adventure that goes beyond the limits of what they thought possible. Man, those names.
Whew. That was rough.
Pym, Van Dyne.
Yeah.
They're strange to say. Okay, so I'll go ahead and kick us off since I got the ball rolling and I've got the momentum. I'll also let you know whenever I will play a message from Justin, who recorded his thoughts on Ant-Man since he couldn't be here today. So I'll play a little clip and then we can kind of take it from there. So I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania a few days ago, and actually, you know what? Let's play Justin's clip first, and then I'll go ahead and go after that, because I think Justin says it pretty well, and I mostly kind of agree with what he says, with a few differences, which I can highlight after that.
Hey guys, sorry I can't be on the episode today. It's a busy week, but I did want to give you this message to just throw in some of my thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. I think this is a decent entry into the MCU, and I've really been enjoying the wackiness of the MCU lately. And actually, recently I've been catching up to all the films I've missed over the past year or two. So I caught up with Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Thor: Love and Thunder, and there's a really interesting progression through the series when you watch them all together, and especially when you factor in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and Loki. It makes this sort of wild, multi-dimensional, all-powerful being thing that they're doing. It's fun to see how they've kind of gradually worked their way there and been introducing it, and now, with this film, we're fully into it. This crazy other universe, beyond time and space, all of this stuff. I do wonder how far we can go in this direction, this multiverse sort of direction, without some of the crazy stuff losing a bit of its luster. I think, to me, Loki felt so cool, and I loved it because of what it was doing and how different it felt. And I think by Quantumania here, I'm a little more adjusted to it, although I do think it sort of sets itself apart in some ways. This movie feels a lot more like a Rick and Morty episode, which is something Mike and I talked about, so I don't want to take all the credit because technically he said it first, although I think it's all I could think about while I was watching this movie was Rick and Morty. But it kind of crossed with some of the more bizarre Star Wars, Clone Wars episodes, which is really cool. I enjoy that sort of just wacky, swinging for the fences, high concept storytelling coming to the MCU. I think it's awesome. What I do think for this movie, though, is there's a dissonance that kind of keeps the movie at odds with itself. And I think that's exemplified with Kang the Conqueror and MODOK. I think I'm saying that right, MODOK. They kind of feel like they're from different movies, and it doesn't quite gel, and that's not to say that I didn't like one or the other. So don't get me wrong. And MODOK is ridiculous in a way that I enjoyed. But I think just the tone of that character and how much he's in this movie makes it hard to feel the weight of some of the other moments in the movie. Some of the stuff that Kang is doing and the weight of that, and his story with Michelle Pfeiffer. Just, it feels less like the weight of it doesn't quite come across because of the MODOK stuff to me, and like the tone of mind that puts me into. And then also like the little Uzi guy that they drink to be able to understand the languages, like the ridiculousness of that undercuts some of the heavy stuff for me. Visually, I think this movie is wild and really fun. I love the world they go into, the little microscopic quantum realm. I love all the creatures they have, like and the different races and all those details. The world building. I'm actually a little sad that we may not be back there, to be honest, because I think it's a lot of fun. I think Jonathan Majors is doing a great job, even though I like I said before, I think he's undercut by some of the other silliness of the movie. But I look forward to seeing how he goes on and like how he develops his character, through this phase, and how that all pays off and culminates. I think he's really interesting, just an interesting actor doing some great stuff. The other person carrying this movie for me is Catherine Newton as Cassie Lang, Ant-Man's daughter. Throughout the rest of the movie, there's a lot of nonsense and like tongue-in-cheek humor, and Paul Rudd, I think, pulls that off, but it doesn't necessarily make me feel that much, except when he's interacting with Cassie, and I put that on her because I think her performance is actually like really, really good in an otherwise silly movie, and she's bringing a lot of heart to this movie, or at least like what heart this movie does have, which isn't a ton, but I think she's bringing it. Ultimately, I didn't like this movie as much as Multiverse of Madness or Loki or Spider-Man No Way Home, but I think there's nothing really horrible about it that would justify its sort of low Rotten Tomatoes score. I think last time I looked, it had like a 45% Rotten score. I don't quite understand that. I kind of get that the big head guy is a really bold choice. It's a big swing, and it doesn't totally work. But I don't know. It's silly. Like, it's hard to really critique that. But overall, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, looking at it as a chapter in the bigger story, I think it works well enough. But I am not sure that it's a film that I'd ever go back to for the experience of the movie on its own. It serves its purpose in, getting us to the next part of the story, and that's good enough for me. Back to you guys.
Okay, Chris. Well, what did you think about what Justin said?
You know what? I kind of agree with everything you said too. Well, similar to you. I think a good comparison here is like the Black Panther. We talked about that, you and I, a while back now. I guess it was last year, wasn't it? Huh? But
yeah, I guess so.
Black Panther to me kind of felt a little overstuffed. And I think I feel the same way here. There's a lot of new characters that are introduced in this as they explore the quantum realm. I don't think all of it's absolutely necessary. There is, like Justin said, kind of like a weird, tonal shifts between what's going on, like kind of the Ant-Man proper, like, because Ant-Man was always like this jokey kind of thing. And then you got Jonathan Majors, threatening to kill everybody. So it's kind of this weird tonal shifts that are going on. I also felt like I was, and I don't watch trailers all the time, but man, I felt like I was really misled by trailers for this movie.
Oh yeah?
Did you see the trailer? Like, there's a trailer that insinuated that like Jonathan Majors is going to give him time back to spend, like, because he...
Oh, kind of like what he was offering to Michelle Pfeiffer in the movie?
Yeah, well...
kind of, in a way?
Yeah, the 5 years. So,
right.
Paul Rudd's character got snapped out, so...
No, he didn't. He was stuck in the quantum realm in a...
Sure.
Whatever.
But for 5 years. And then he came back and he missed her growing up.
In that time dilation storm, or whatever the fuck they call it. I don't remember what it's called.
Sure. And it seemed like Jonathan Majors was going to offer him in the trailer. I wonder if that was true, that at one point
I
this
thought
movie
it was. But then again, I have seen the trailer, and I thought I remembered that them at least mentioning that in the movie, but it could be that I've seen the trailer so many times I got kind of confused.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. Movie doesn't have to deliver.
Oh, that's right, because in the movie he's like, no, I don't think we do have a deal, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really weird. I also think that some of what's going on, just with Marvel in general right now is they're still recovering from COVID. Like, I think this movie was filmed a while ago and finished, and I'm sure they did reshoots and stuff like that for it. So this movie could have changed, and the story plot, I think, is pretty obviously that it did change based on like advertisements and stuff. So I think Marvel just in general is trying to recover. Like, they had a plan, as much as Marvel ever has a plan, but then things just got mixed up and turned around, and I think we're getting a lot of those, the residual effects in our movies, and the movies not being quite as good as they used to be. But I will say, I think I had a great time with this movie. I had fun. Some of the littler characters, like the whole guy, I thought was pretty funny. So yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, so I agree with you and Justin that the tone is a bit all over the place, but I don't think that stopped me from being able to enjoy Kang and his plot line,
Sure.
or at least feel the weight of it. I don't want to say that Justin implied he didn't enjoy Kang. It's very obvious I think he did. But he said that maybe the tone kind of undercut the weight of that plot. I think that kind of sums it up accurately, or close enough. And I don't know. I did feel the weight of this, and I am more inclined to give this movie a little bit better of a review than I normally would, because I did really like Jonathan Majors and Kang in this movie. It feels like a payoff from Loki that was promised, and I really hope we get more focused down on that soon, because I think where I am at on the MCU is there's too much going on right now. And the thing that I am most interested in that's going on is the multiverse and the rise of Kang, or Kangs, versions of Kang.
Yeah.
That Loki promised after Endgame. I think that was an interesting tease, and I wish that I could see more of the disparate elements. I wish I could see Moon Knight and Eternals and some of the other stuff tying into this element of the MCU a little bit more. So to me, this movie felt like a breath of fresh air, because that's the area I'm most interested in. Is like the
This is furthering the story.
Right, this is furthering the plot. Is it a little bit flawed? Yes. I don't think the volume looks as good on movies blown up big as it seems to for things like The Mandalorian.
Sure.
But I think there's a learning curve there. I don't think Love and Thunder looked very good, and I don't think this movie looks very good. And it's very obvious they used the volume technology on both of them.
Yeah.
And it very clearly looks like actors running around on a stage, and they need to find a way to blend the two a little bit better, in my opinion. But maybe less, Bob Iger recently said they were doing less projects, so maybe that will happen. Maybe they'll pull back, or maybe the budget will get even tighter and things will continue to look bad. I don't know. This movie made a lot of money, and I'm sure they won't spend more than they have to. But yeah, I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the Ant-Man movies. Like, the previous two Ant-Man movies seem to be more beloved by most people than I like them. They're pretty low on my best of MCU list.
They're fun, I think.
Yeah, they're fun, but not fun enough in my experience.
And they don't necessarily tie into the overall.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. They're too standalone-y, in my opinion. They don't capitalize on the shrinking things element of Ant-Man enough, I don't think. I want to see shrink more stuff, I like when they shrink things or blow things up that are normally small into things that are big, more of that, more of that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, more Honey, I Shrunk Your Kids stuff.
Yeah, play up on that a little bit more. I feel like for all the promise of shrinking, I feel like Ant-Man's blown up more than he is shrunk.
Well, because it's more visually interesting. He can interact with the other characters, But yes,
yeah, that's true.
I think you're right. He does blow up more often. But I also think that the shrinking and the being big are weird in the quantum realm, because they're already small. So he's just getting
smaller. Why isn't he just shooting out of the quantum realm?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. But there's a lot to like in this movie. In my personal opinion, it's the best Ant-Man movie, but that's not really saying a lot. I also agree with Justin that I don't quite understand the Rotten Tomatoes score for this.
Yeah.
I feel like with both the Eternals and this movie, those movies aren't perfect, but for both of them, I feel like they're not that much different than the stuff that the MCU has like fresh scores on Rotten Tomatoes with. You know, like I can name 10 Marvel movies that are worse than this one.
Yeah, I think Rotten Tomatoes just in general, like it has a bad score, but it lacks nuance. I've read reviews that like sound better, you know, like they like the movie a lot better than what their initial rating is, you know, type of thing. So like that's a problem with Rotten Tomatoes is it just lacks nuance.
Too binary.
Yeah. But I do think in general...
And also, I think it's... Well, hold your thought. I also think that it's more of a sign of just general Marvel fatigue than it is the quality of the actual movies themselves.
Sure. And I think well, this is a bigger picture type of thing, but I think Marvel was kind of received this way when they first started coming out. And then as we got closer to like the Endgame stuff, I think two things happened. The movies got a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then... the in-game stuff, like I love Infinity War and Endgame. I thought that those were really well done. And then, you know, those were all like reviewed fairly well, if I remember correctly. And then we're kind of back to like what it was like as we were starting off again. So I think low reviewed movies is just kind of par for the course as far as this goes.
Yeah. And like I said, I think these movies are like, you know, Eternals, I think is a lesser movie than, well, I don't know which. They're both pretty on par, I guess. But I don't know. Like I said, I could name movies that are in the Marvel that have like fresh ratings that are worse than those.
Yeah, Black Panther, I think, got was well reviewed, and both of us kind of had problems with it, you know. And I think that this Black Panther is kind of equal to Ant-Man here, but.
I enjoyed Ant-Man more.
Yeah.
Than Wakanda Forever, not the first Black Panther.
Yeah. Wakanda Forever, I definitely enjoyed Ant-Man more. But Wakanda Forever, not only was it part of the MCU, so it's already like lifting a bunch of stuff, but it's also dealing with the death of its star. And so
something
like,
no movie should have to do, but unfortunately that movie has the task of doing, which is completely unfair.
Yeah. And they try to acknowledge it and all that stuff. So, I think in this movie, I enjoyed it better. You know, like there's goofy characters. I guess we can get into spoilers now if you're ready. This is an okay movie. If you're watching Marvel movies, I don't think you need us to tell you to go watch it. You know, like...
Yeah. It worked, like Justin says, I think it works well enough as a chapter in the overall story. It furthers the plot in ways that Miss Marvel and Moon Knight and stuff didn't really do, and they just kind of spun their wheels and lasted 6 episodes. Like, it's a movie, it's to the point, you know, it furthers the plot. I think in time, I don't want to say it'll be reviewed better, but I honestly don't think it's as bad as the Rotten Tomatoes score, but it's also really not that great either.
Yeah. I think Justin, we'll leave it at this, I guess, maybe, but like Justin, and I've come to appreciate this more, and I think he started this theory like at the beginning of this podcast, I think, but like Marvel movies, you know, really are like anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 and they very rarely
out of 5
out of 5, and they very rarely leave that little circle. So
I counted today. I on my top 10 Marvel films, I have a list on Letterboxd. I out of 5 stars, the highest one is a 4-star. And there are like 7 of them.
7 4-stars?
Like 7 movies out of the entire MCU I've given 4 stars to, which seems like a lot. I didn't think I had that many.
It's like 31 movies though, so.
But that also said, I've only given 2 stars to 2 of them. The rest have been between 2.5 and 3.5.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
And those are like the Incredible Hulk and Thor 2.
Sure. I think the other thing that kind of happens too is like everybody, well, we talk about Marvel movies so much just in our culture, you know, like the discourse of it is so much. But like, so when there is one that's kind of poorly reviewed I think we just overreact, you know, like in both ways. So like when we get something like Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which is good, and one of the better ones but we go crazy for it. That's one of the ones
I gave 4 to.
Yeah, but it's not a 5-star movie. It's not.
Nah.
Yeah, like, and we just kind of overreact one way or the other, and in 5 years, this movie will be seen as good, as decent. Yeah, you know, like.
Remember before the internet and before like review conglomerate websites kind of like guided the way and told people what to think, movies could could just be a good time with some bad stuff in them, and they weren't viewed as like lesser movies. You know what I mean? Like, remember back in the day whenever you could just watch a movie and there could be bad stuff and good stuff, and you could understand the difference, and the movie still had value.
Sure. We say as we talk on a podcast, there's just so many opinions out there that it's hard to, like, everybody wants their hot take and stuff like that.
Well, it feels like there's no nuance anymore. It feels like whenever like the review score is in, people get so upset and worked up about it, and it's just like, I don't know, you could like a thing that's not popular.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct.
But anyways, I don't know. That said, this is completely middle of the road MCU, but it's enjoyable enough, and yeah, I guess spoilers. Let's do it.
All right.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any orange cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
All right. So some of the things I really enjoyed are kind of spoilery. Let's talk about MODOK.
Yes.
How did MODOK work for you? I guess he already talked about it a little bit, but there are specific things I wanted to talk about that are spoilery.
I don't know. It took me like the first 3 or 4 scenes where you see MODOK to just like adjust to it.
Sure.
And you know what I mean? I was happy they brought back Corey Stoll.
Yeah.
I'm glad they brought back that character. It felt right. It felt like a way to tie the Ant-Man movies in together,
Mm-hmm.
The visual aspect of it, it's supposed to be kind of unsettling, but I can't tell if it's unsettling or just like bad looking. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's hard to really tell with that thing. Yeah. It's just so out there and weird and bonkers. It's one of those characters that like hasn't been attempted to be adapted into live action for a reason until now, So I like the idea that they took that kind of character and kind of addressed the ridiculous visual concept and sort of didn't take it too seriously. I don't know that it was entirely successful, but I did enjoy the way it wrapped up. His scenes wrapped up whenever he was dying, and he tells Scott Lang, he's like, I always thought of you as a brother, and Paul Rudd's reaction's just sort of like, what? Like, all right.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I got to fight with you side by side like an Avenger, like a true Avenger or whatever.
Yeah,
and,
I get to die an Avenger.
Yeah, and then Paul Rudd's like, yeah, sure, man, you're in. Like, that was all pretty good. So like the chuckle that got out of me, justified the character and the arc, and I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's why I did enjoy this movie. Was that kind of off the cuff type humor that was in there. Paul Rudd's just really charming. So like you have the opening sequence of him in San Francisco and him pretending to be Spider-Man to get free coffee.
Yeah.
Or just mistaken. And his book, which apparently comes out. There's going to be a book comes out in November or something. I think. Anyways, yeah, I liked all that stuff. I liked the end sequence too. And then I liked the little characters that we had, like the houses that were alive, and the hole. The guy's like, how many holes do you have?
The goo guy,
yeah,
that like drink him.
Yeah, that was fun, and I kind of wish we had more of that, or less of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, after kind of responding to Justin's thoughts. The tone changes and the tone clashes didn't really bother me. I think I've just learned to accept that at this point in these movies. I don't know. I think they've sort of beaten me into this. I just don't care about the comedy that doesn't land anymore. But a lot of the comedy in this did land for me. Not all of it. I enjoyed Bill Murray's part. I wish that monster would have eaten him.
Yeah, or I wish there had been more Bill Murray, or none.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know. I like his one scene in and out thing. But if there's one character I think that doesn't entirely work for me in this movie with the humor, it's Michael Douglas's character, Hank Pym. I like him there, but I feel like all he's really doing is sticking his hands in like gooey controls and then like walking in front of CGI ants. I don't know. I wish he almost would have like disappeared for portions of the movie so that it could have been more tightly focused on some other stuff and given the revolutionaries a bit more time to shine.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where...
And then like have him come in at the end whenever he rides in with the ants and then have him like kind of explain it in like a 30-second flashback where he's like, I've been hanging out with these ants these whole times.
And he had to explain it anyways, right? So he's already explaining something,
Yeah, but then that wouldn't have worked because he would have been dead because they were like trapped in a time thingy. But I don't know. There's too much going on, it basically is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And some of the Michael Douglas humor was the weakest. So maybe get it out of there and maybe that kind of helps tighten it up a bit.
That's where it compares to Black Panther. It's kind of overstuffed, and I wish they kind of... or Wakanda Forever, I should point out. But
some of the best Marvel movies, in my opinion, are really tight stories about the protagonists on their adventure. Like the first Iron Man, the second Captain America. Like keep it focused, or I don't know. But then again, I contradict myself because then again, I like Civil War a lot, which is like a movie that juggles a whole lot of stuff.
But Civil War, and it's been a while since I've seen it. It is focused in the way that it's just about Iron Man and Captain America. Well,
it introduces Black Panther and Spider-Man, if you remember.
That's true. And Black Panther gets its own... Spider-Man doesn't necessarily need an introduction at that point.
That's true. But he gets like a it's basically that movie's doing a lot, is what I'm saying.
That's true.
But I feel like that movie juggles it better than stuff like Black Panther or this movie.
Yeah. Bring the Russo brothers back because they're not doing good movies now.
That's not... I mean, that's true. I didn't really like The Gray Man, but no. I also wished I did.
I wish I liked it a lot more than I did. Absolutely. Yeah. Because that's kind of the thing that we want. The discourse is like more original movies. And here's an original movie. It's not that great, though.
Yeah. But it's also not that bad either.
Sure.
It's pretty middle of the road, if you ask me.
Yeah, I think you're probably not wrong. But anyways, I think you're right. I think the humor, for what it is, distracted me enough that I wasn't worried about all these other things going on. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, I think that's it, really. Oh, no, that's not true. We haven't talked about Kang. Or the behind the scenes, not the behind the scenes, the after credit scenes.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
so Kang, Jonathan Majors, we talked about this in non-spoilers. The guy's great.
He's best always part of the
great.
Movie.
Yeah, it feels like at this point, it feels pretty redundant to just keep praising him and everything he pops up in. But hey, I'm going to watch Creed 3 soon, and I'm sure I'll do the same thing there.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Creed 3.
Yeah.
And I'm also excited. The thing that this movie did really well is set up... Well, for me, my excitement for what's coming. The more Jonathan Major roles, and I feel like he's going to really get to like stretch his acting chops, which isn't a thing you can really say about Marvel movies, but he's going to be able to play all these different characters.
Yep.
And that'll be a lot of fun. The other thing is there is a little bit of a terrifying thing to him when he's like talking to Ant-Man, and he's like, "Which one are you? Have I killed you before?"
Oh, that was good.
I really.
Well, he knew what the Avengers were.
And he'd beat him.
And then he also implies that he's killed some before.
Yeah. So
multiple times. And so much so that he can't even remember which ones and when.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. And I really like that part of it.
And his chemistry with Michelle Pfeiffer was good.
Ooh, boy. I think Jonathan Majors can have chemistry with just about anybody.
That's true. And I think Michelle Pfeiffer is just a specimen of a person.
She
doesn't appear to be aging at all, just her hair.
Yeah, I like that flashback that they had together. I thought that was really
I could have gone for more of that, honestly.
Yeah, I would have. Hope Van Dyne, like she should have been the lead, and then everybody else kind of in the background.
Here's the thing, though, I am pretty frustrated with this movie about, and I do agree, is pretty unforgivable. The idea that Janet Van Dyne has not discussed Kang with anyone and refuses to do so until the opportune moment in the script is insane, especially after they're already down there.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what's going on? Why are you freaking out? What's going on? please tell us what's happening. And she's like, not now. And it's like, well, then when?
Yeah, when he actually faces us. Yeah, that you're right.
That's pretty unforgivable, in my opinion. I hate when movies and shows do that. It feels like in the year of our Lord 2023, we should be beyond this.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to go back to this, but like I think a lot of that has to do with the story changed, like so many times that it was just they had to do it.
People give Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness a lot of shit that I don't think it deserves. And they cite how that movie's a mess, and they could see it in the movie and the finished product. I don't think it's quite as glaring in that movie as it is this one.
I would agree. I don't think
that movie feels pretty tight and like folds back in on itself. It sets up the body at the beginning and at the end. But anyway,
yeah.
This movie, despite that, I did enjoy it, and it does move the story forward. And Jonathan Majors pretty much carries the whole thing on his back, and that momentum, to me, this is like the Kang movie. That's kind of how I think about it. I kind of forget that Ant-Man's even the
main guy.
The main character.
That makes sense, yeah.
But like Justin said, I think Cassie Lang, on the other hand, this is a great
it's also a
build up for her.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what she does next. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
She is now an exciting, fun character that I agree with him is the heart of this movie beyond Jonathan Majors. I wish, honestly, that it would have been like I wish Cassie would have had more to do in the final fight. I wish it would have been Ant-Man, Wasp, and Cassie teaming up to fight Kang instead of just Ant-Man.
Yeah.
That would have made him more impressive, and that would have made the fight more interesting. Because here's the thing about Paul Rudd. He doesn't really seem like a very imposing guy.
He's going to charm you to death is what's going to happen.
Yeah. He's going to make Kang fall in love. But you know what I mean? Like, so I think I would have believed it more if they were like tagged, like Wasp was flying around punching him and Ant-Man was punching and Cassie was but that's whatever.
Yeah.
But I do think Kang kind of went out like a chump in this movie.
Yeah. Do you think is Kang dead?
No.
Well, there's a lot of Kangs.
I don't know what's going to happen, but it feels very Rick and Morty-esque right now, like what Justin said, which makes sense because there have been Rick and Morty writers coming to write a lot of this phase.
Which makes sense. It's the multiverse,
Yeah, and I like the way they're approaching it, kind of like Rick and Morty, where it's just like, no holds barred. Like, once you break through there's kind of, you could see anyone for any reason. There's always a universe that matches your wildest dreams,
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a, I don't know, kind of a two-way street, I guess, but because it feels like when there's no rules, it could also go really bad.
Sure, there's no stakes anymore. Yeah.
All right. So they have to be careful to like ground us in emotional connections to specific characters. You know what I mean? Like,
sure,
our Tony Stark is dead. Do not bring back our Tony Stark because you know it's only a matter of time before
he'll show back up. Hopefully,
yeah. Robert Downey Jr. is back somewhere.
And I actually think that the story, that was advertised in the trailers would have been more compelling too, because those are stakes. Like I want those 5 years with my daughter back, and I'm willing to give that up for this, type of thing. If you can rewind time.
Well, it's unfortunate that like the movie feels so overstuffed because Hope Van Dyne kind of gets sidetracked and doesn't get to do a lot in this movie.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just feels like there's too much and not enough with so many characters.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Go on.
Oh, I was just gonna. We have the two end credit scenes.
Right.
What did you think about which one was the first one? Was that the one where he was
the Council of Kangs, the Rick and Morty-esque Kangs?
Yeah.
Where there's a whole bunch of them on a council. They all communicate with each other, and they have outlawed the Kangiest Kang, the one that is the troublemaker. So here's my theory, and it could be completely wrong. I think instead of the whole bunch of Kangs being the ultimate bad guys, I think this Kang is going to come back, and he's going to take out the other Kangs. But that might be too Rick and Morty-esque. I don't know.
He could.
But they seem to be scared of him. They set up that he was the scary one, and Paul Rudd's like, did I get him? Did I get him? Or did I just make way for something worse? Because he said what's worse.
Yeah.
So was, I don't know. It seems like he was banished, so he wasn't really stopping the other Kangs from coming out.
Was the Kang from Loki, was he the one kind of keeping order?
Yeah, he was the one pruning the timeline.
So, like, whatever the other Kangs were doing, he was kind of correcting it. Was that
right? So, like, he was making sure that there couldn't be another multiversal war like what's brewing now, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know that he was pruning all timelines, but it seemed like what he was doing is he was preventing rogue Kangs from being able to be born.
Okay.
Because from what I understand is Kang is born sometime like centuries from now.
In the future, right?
Right. And whenever he gets his little ship or whatever, he can fly around and do chaos. And apparently it got so bad that there was a multiversal war. And He Who Remains Kang from Loki was keeping it all together. And like I said, I don't know if he was killing all other Kangs, and now that he's gone, Kangs are popping up everywhere, or if it's that some Kangs were allowed to exist and he was pruning the trouble Kangs. I don't really know yet, but
yeah, I think that's whatever he was doing or how he was doing it. He was keeping order, and then they've kind of unstopped the bottle, and
right. And, anything, as we see in Ant-Man, anything can make a new timeline. Him turning another direction, all possible, possibility, everything. So there's infinite timelines happening. So that's kind of how I understand it, but it's still early in this whole
it could change.
So anyway, and then we also saw, besides the whole bunch of Kangs, we also saw the second one, which looks like a clip from season 2 of Loki.
Yeah, I kind of thought of it as just a trailer for Loki.
Yeah, like a scene we're gonna see from
that.
But anyway, that's exciting. It looks like Jonathan Majors is going to be participating in Loki season 2, so that's fun.
In a much more prominent role, I think, too.
Yeah,
so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, hopefully that show will start answering some of the questions that I find that I'm putting all on this movie so far,
Yeah, like what can Kang do? We just kind of had that discussion.
What's his deal?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm excited for Loki season 2. I like Loki season 1. I think that was the best show.
Easily.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we did it, right?
I think so. I think Justin would be proud.
Yeah. Maybe he'll watch. Maybe he'll tell us. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, so let's end the show now. So thank you, listener, for listening. Thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. You can find more of his music at www.soundcloud.com/bopscotch. Stay tuned to this feed. Our next episode will probably be a Criterion on The Third Man.
Unless we want to do Cocaine Bear.
We'll see. So if you want to find us on social media, you can look for us on most things at @casualcinecast, but Twitter's really the only place where we are active regularly, even though it's a cesspool and it's burning to the ground and it's horrible. And I don't recommend anyone be on Twitter, but if you are, look us up. We're there. Vote on our stuff. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.